afternoon, everyone. Hi, we are here for the Subcommittee on Education, Business, and Administration, which is new to me, so this is going to be fun. I would like to call up Catherine Barber, our budget analyst, to present the analysis for the Interagency Commission on School Construction. Ms. Barber. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Hedelman. For the record, my name is Catherine Barber, and today I'll be presenting the operating budget analysis for the Interagency Commission on School Construction. In fiscal 27, the Interagency Commission on School Construction's operating budget decreases by nearly $503,000, or 2.6%, to $18.7 million after accounting for a $291,000 proposed deficiency appropriation. Exhibit 1 on page 2 breaks out agency spending by purpose. Slightly more than half of the proposed fiscal 27 budget, or $10 million, supports school safety grants. These grants fund security improvements like surveillance systems, access control systems, emergency generators, door hardware, and other security modifications in public schools. The remaining $8.7 million supports administrative expenses, mostly related to personnel. As you can see in Exhibit 2 on page 3, the main driver of the decrease is a one-time special fund transfer from the Maryland Energy Administration in the prior fiscal year for ongoing public school decarbonization efforts. Moving on to personnel on page 4, IAC has 3 vacancies out of its 44 positions, of which 2 have been vacant for over a year. IAC reported that it has plans to recruit for its capital construction engineer vacancy, which has been vacant the longest. Because of those plans, DLS recommends abolishing a different long-term vacancy for an administrative specialist position that has been open since last February. The key observation section of the analysis begins at the bottom of page 4. Chapters 166 and 167 of 2024 required the IAC to establish facility mapping standards that ensure that school maps are consistent and accessible, primarily for first responders during emergencies. In June 2025, IAC published the finalized guidelines, which were established in collaboration with the Maryland Center for School Safety, the Department of Information Technology, and Emergency Services. The summaries of the finalized standards are listed on page 5. Key observation 2 starts at the bottom of page 5 and discusses IAC's statewide facility assessment report, which is mandated by Chapter 32 of 2022. The report assesses the condition of critical systems, environmental quality, the state of lighting and acoustics, the presence of hazardous materials like asbestos and lead, and specialized safety and sanitary equipment. IAC measures the condition of critical systems, including HVAC, roofs, and life safety systems like fire alarms, using the Facility Condition Index, or FCI. An FCI under 45% generally signifies satisfactory condition, while scores over 60% indicate critical issues. Across all their critical systems, public school facilities averaged about 55% on the Facility Condition Index. A number of facilities are also facing issues with temperature, humidity, carbon dioxide levels, acoustics, lighting, asbestos, and lead paint, though it's important to note that no buildings had to close due to the presence of hazardous materials. LEAs also reported that 316 school buildings lack key safety and sanitary equipment in their health rooms, labs, and kitchens, as required by local statute. Exhibit 3 on page 6 shows overall facility rating results from fiscal 21 to 25. More than a quarter, or 26.6%, of Maryland's public schools are not in satisfactory condition as of fiscal 25. Altogether, IIC's report reinforces concerns about school conditions and building safety across the state. The recommended action to abolish one PIN is on page 8, and there's one update on page 9 about IAC's cloud-based asset library. Otherwise, that concludes my presentation, and I can take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? No questions. All right. Then we will ask Alex Donahue, Executive Director of the IAC, to please come up.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. First, thank you for this opportunity to respond to questions and comment on the operating budget for the IEC, and more importantly, I thank you for your strong and continuing support for public school construction in Maryland. I also thank Catherine Barber and DLS staff for their excellent analysis and support. The IEC and their staff are tasked with a significant mission to provide leadership and resources to local education agencies to develop and sustain school facilities so that all Maryland public school students, teachers, administrators, and staff have safe and educationally sufficient environments in which to teach and learn. Each year, this mission has included approving designs and contracts for hundreds of school district construction projects, managing an annual average of about $800 million in capital grants to school districts, directly visiting and assessing more than 500 school facilities a year, and providing ongoing technical assistance to 24 school districts and the Maryland School for the Blind. Over the last 2 years or so, it has also included preparing a large amount of data and policy options for the General Assembly to support its decision-making around school construction funding. When I recently reported to some of your committee's members when briefing the Appropriations Committee, the challenges that Maryland school districts, counties, and the state face together are significant in affording healthy, safe, and educationally sufficient school facilities, to put it very mildly. The Commission and I greatly appreciate your continued support for our support to you and the local jurisdictions. Your support has enabled the Commission to facilitate some essential three-party collaborative efforts in which school districts, their counties or city, and the state have either improved the future condition of their school facilities, increased the affordability of these facilities, or both. With your continued support, we will expand this work to include more of Maryland's counties and get closer to the future that we all want for our public school students, staff, and the communities that our schools anchor. In our written testimony, we responded to the analysts' questions and provided additional information that may be of interest to the members. Now I will respond to 2 questions posed by DLS and stand for any questions you might have. First, regarding DLS's recommendation to abolish one PIN to save costs. For context, the IEC currently has 44 PINs and is operating on an extremely lean operating budget that equates to an overhead rate of less than 1% against the capital budget that it manages. It's far lower than the typical 5 to 12% overhead rate of philanthropic and public grant management organizations. Because of the specialized nature of the IEC's work, the hiring of staff sometimes takes longer than some other state agencies. Additionally, as the scope of the IEC's work grows, the hiring of staff has been additionally challenging, but the IEC is working to hire into those key positions. And for this reason, reclassifications of vacant PINs are being performed to attempt that no unit is unable to manage its workload. The hiring of that specific PIN recommended for deletion was delayed due to this reclassification of the position as IEC worked with DBM to create an appropriate MS-22 for the position to support an understaffed unit within the agency. We're working with DBM now to unfreeze and fill that position in the next couple of months so that it is able to support the activities of that unit. And that is also connected with our work with the Maryland Energy Administration to scope the needs of the public schools with regard to energy efficiency and decarbonization to meet the state's climate protection goals. For this reason, the IEC respectfully disagrees with the recommendation to abolish the position and requests maintaining budgetary support for the position. Second, the budget analysis notes that the IEC had 5 reports outstanding as of a few weeks ago. 3 of the reports are quarterly financial reports, and the remaining 2 are solar and alternative energy reports to be submitted together as a joint report. The 3 quarterly financial reports were significantly delayed due to understaffing in the finance department, which would be exacerbated by the removal of the PIN that I mentioned. However, we have since submitted all 5 of the outstanding reports and expect to provide by the end of this month our response to the Joint Chair's report confirming the submission of all outstanding reports. I will note that the deadlines for the quarterly financial reports are the last days of the periods being reported on, which means that we don't actually have enough time to compile and vet the necessary data and formulate the reports. Our departmental bill currently in this committee would adjust the deadlines of all these reports to provide sufficient time. And if that bill passes, we anticipate being able to make all future report deadlines. And I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. Senator Quarterman.
Madam Chair, quick question, Alex, and by no means to put you on the spot or anything, but it came up when the analyst was talking about some of the instances in some of the schools about asbestos and things like that, which triggered a thought here. It was indicated in the report, none of the instances of lead or asbestos necessitated a building or space closure. Williamsport High School in Washington County, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, was closed in July. It was supposed to open back up in January. I'll be honest, I'm not sure if they reopened or not.
They have.
They have reopened.
They have.
Okay.
That is actually you're correct, that is the first instance in which asbestos has caused a closure. Right. The nuance there is it was
remediation went sideways, I understand.
Bingo. It was as a result of a project that went wrong.
Right.
But it has been remediated and corrected now. The school's back open in service.
To be fair, it's just outside my district.
Understood.
But we do have kids that go there, so I appreciate the update. Thank you.
Of course.
Are there any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will next move on to the Maryland State Department of Education, Early Childhood Development, and ask Natalie Andrade to come up, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Natalie Andrade, and I'm here with the Department of Legislative Services to present the fiscal 27 allowance for the Division of Early Childhood in the Maryland State Department of Education. On page 1 of the analysis, the fiscal 27 budget increases by $69.1 million, or 7.7%, to $966.1 million. On page 5 begins a discussion of performance measures. The first measure is capacity of childcare providers. Exhibit 1 shows that total licensed childcare capacity has remained relatively stable in the most recent fiscal years. Capacity increased to 207,000 slots in fiscal 2024 and remained essentially flat in fiscal 2025. On page 6, Exhibit 2 helps explain this stability by showing offsetting trends across provider types. While overall capacity appears stable, there has been a long-term decline in small family childcare home capacity, which decreased by 37.8% between July 2016 and July 2025. At the same time, capacity among large family childcare homes increased by 74.1%, and licensed childcare center capacity increased by just 2.3%. On page 7, there is a second measure related to the redesigned kindergarten readiness assessment that was implemented in the 2025-2026 school year. Exhibit 3 shows that statewide, 57% of all students were classified as established in early literacy, meaning that they met kindergarten readiness expectation in early literacy. 13.2% as developing, indicating partial mastery of foundational skills, and 29.7% as beginning, reflecting limited demonstration of readiness skills at the time of the assessment. Exhibit 4 on page 8 shows that statewide 55.3% of all students were classified as established in mathematics. Regarding these results, MSD should explain how the redesigned KRA addresses and mitigates the implicit bias previously identified for students from various racial, ethnic, and linguistic backgrounds, including any changes to assessment design, validation method, or administration procedures. On page 10, the fiscal 27 allowance includes 3 proposed fiscal 26 deficiency appropriations, totaling $64.5 million. These include $48.8 million for the Child Care Scholarship Program to provide additional federal funds, $14.9 million in Blueprint special funds for private pre-kindergarten programs, and $646,000 for shortfalls related to lower than expected vacancy rate savings. On page 11, Exhibit 6 shows the distribution of the $966.1 million in planned spending in the fiscal 2027 allowance. $544 million, or 56.3%, is allocated to childcare scholarships. $284 million, or 29.4% to publicly funded pre-kindergarten, 51 million or 5.3% to jury and party centers, and 42 million or 4.4% to the Division of Early Childhood. Exhibit 7 on pages 12 and 13 shows that the 69.1 million increase is primarily driven by a 69.9 million increase in pre-kindergarten formula funding and a 5.9 million increase for jury center expansion, and a 2.2 million increase for the therapeutic childcare program. These increases are partially offset by a 5.7 million decrease due to the end of a funding mandate for the childcare credential program, and a 5.8 million decrease in federal funds within the Division of Early Childhood. On page 14 begins issue number 1 related to the ongoing childcare scholarship program enrollment freeze. The childcare scholarship program provided financial assistance to 43,722 eligible children and over 29,493 families per month on average in fiscal 2025. Exhibit 8 on page 15 shows monthly count of children enrolled in the childcare scholarship program from January 2019 through November 2025. Enrollment increased steadily beginning in January 2022 and exceeded the pre-pandemic peak of 20,900 children recorded in October 2019. Enrollment reached a record high of 47,811 children in June 2025, following the announcement of the enrollment freeze effective May 1st, 2025. Exhibit 9 on pages 16 and 17 shows children on the childcare scholarship waitlist by county and age group as of October 28, 2025. There were 3,745 children from 2,700 families on the waitlist. The largest numbers of children on the waitlist were in Prince George's County, Montgomery County, Baltimore County, and Baltimore City. The agency has reported that the enrollment freeze will remain in place until monthly enrollment reaches approximately 40,000 children, which MSDE identified as the level needed to maintain fiscal stability. MSDE should discuss the estimated time frame for the childcare scholarship enrollment to reach 40,000 children and the prioritization method it will use for taking children off the waitlist to replace these enrollments. Exhibit 10 on page 18 shows the childcare scholarship expenditures by fund source from fiscal 22 through fiscal 27 allowance. Total spending increased from 162.2 million in fiscal 22 to 543.7 million in the fiscal 27 allowance. Federal funds cover a substantial share of costs in fiscal 22 and 23, including supplemental COVID CCDF funds. Beginning in fiscal 24 and continuing through fiscal 27, general funds cover on average approximately 78% of total program expenses. The fiscal 27 allowance also includes a proposed federal fund deficiency of 48.8 million to utilize all available federal funds to cover the unexpected enrollment growth leading to the enrollment freeze. Beginning on page 19, the analysis discusses updated provider reimbursement rates under the childcare scholarship program. MSDE estimates the cost impact at approximately 2.75 million per month or 33 million on an annualized basis. The fiscal 27 allowance does not fully incorporate the updated reimbursement rate, which indicates that the childcare scholarship program may be underfunded by approximately $33 million. MSDE should comment on the exclusion of the updated provider reimbursement rate cost from the fiscal 27 allowance and how it will address the potential 33 million shortfall. Issue number 2 begins on page 20 and provides an overview of early childhood programs under the Blueprint for Maryland Future. The fiscal 27 allowance includes $362.4 million in total funds for Blueprint mandates supporting early childhood programs, with the majority supported by special funds from the Blueprint Fund. The Maryland Child Care Credential Program does not receive funds, as funding for the program is not mandated in fiscal 2027. MSDE should comment on how the absence of funding will affect the implementation of the Maryland Child Care Credential Program, including whether new credential application will be processed and whether existing participants will continue to receive credential payments. Exhibit 11 on page 22 shows early childhood funding under the blueprint for fiscal 26 and fiscal 27. The Maryland State Pre-Kindergarten Grant Program increased by $84.8 million. Wraparound and supportive services increased by $9.1 million, while workforce and program quality development funding decreases by $5.9 million. Exhibit 12 on page 23 presents pre-kindergarten state funding and enrollment from fiscal 2019 through fiscal 2027. The fiscal 2027 allowance includes $257 million for the pre-kindergarten formula and supports 26,240 children, including 24,383 Tier 1 students and 1,857 Tier 2 students. Exhibit 13 on page 25 shows the Tier 2 pre-kindergarten sliding scale revision for the fiscal 27. MSDE and the State Board of Education revised the Tier 2 full-day pre-kindergarten sliding scale beginning with fiscal 2027. Compared to prior Tier 2 assumptions, they revised the scale. It lowers the effective family share relative to the higher per pupil amount and increases the combined state and local share per Tier 2 student. The largest increases occur in the higher income bands, where the previous scale required families to cover a substantially greater portion of total cost. As a result, the fiscal impact of the Tier 2 program is higher on a per-student basis under the revised scale, even before accounting for changes in enrollment levels. MSDE should provide an explanation for revising the Tier 2 sliding scale and quantify the resulting change in total state and local cost compared to the prior structure. While expanding access to early education is a priority, these changes pose significant budgetary pressures. The combination of eligibility growth and rising per pupil cost could require substantial new state funding at a time when fiscal constraints are an ongoing concern. So DLS recommends modification to the statutory requirements. First, to maintain the current 360% of the federal poverty guidelines eligibility cap through fiscal 2027 instead of expanded to the 600% of the federal poverty guidelines in fiscal 2027. And second, to reduce the scheduled per pupil funding increase in fiscal 2027 by setting the amount at $17,211 per student instead of $19,950. Issue number 3 begins on page 26 and relates to the expansion of the pre-kindergarten mixed delivery system. Exhibit 14 on page 27 shows the percentage of publicly funded pre-kindergarten slots served by eligible private providers by county in the 2024-2025 and 2025-2026 school years. In the 2024 and 2025 school year, when the requirement was 10%, only 4 counties met or exceeded the threshold. In the 2025 and 2026 school year, the requirement increased to 20%, and only Montgomery County met the statutory threshold. Most local education agencies require waivers in both school years. So MSDE should discuss the efforts currently underway to expand eligible private provider capacity and indicate whether it anticipates improved compliance among LEAs. Issue number 4 on page 28 relates to the CCATS modernization project. The project received approximately $44.1 million in federal funding through fiscal 2026. In November 2025, MSDE paused the project. The legacy CCAT system continues to operate with annual maintenance cost averaging slightly over $7 million. MSDE should clarify whether ongoing operational and maintenance funding for the existing CCAT system is included in the fiscal 2027 allowance and identify the amount and fund source supporting continuous system operations. On page 29 begins the operating recommended actions. The first recommended action is to add language reducing the special fund appropriation for the pre-kindergarten funding formula by $52.6 million contingent on legislation limiting Tier 2 expansion and adjusting the per pupil funding growth. The second recommended action is to adopt a committee narrative requesting quarterly reports on the Charca Scholarship Program expenditures, enrollment, and the status of the waiting list. With that, I conclude my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? All right, I'd like to call up Carrie Wright, Superintendent of Schools, please. Go right
Good
ahead.
afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about our fiscal year 2027 Division of Early Childhood budget. With me today at the table are Sarah Neville Morgan. She's the Assistant Superintendent for the Division of Early Childhood. Donna Gunning, our Chief Financial Officer, and Krishna Tulur, our Chief Operating Officer. And I'd like to start by thanking Natalie Andrade for her wonderful analysis as usual. Thank you. When I reflect on where Maryland was just a few years ago and where we are today, I see a system that is fundamentally stronger, more accessible, and more accountable than at any point in our history. That progress did not happen by accident. It happened because Maryland made a deliberate choice through the Blueprint for Maryland's Future and through your partnership to treat early childhood not as an add-on, but as the foundation of our educational system. Today, Maryland is investing nearly $1 billion in early childhood education. This is a historic commitment to our youngest learners and to the families who depend on a strong early learning system. Since 2022, we have expanded access at an unprecedented scale. The Child Care Scholarship Program more than doubled in enrollment in just 3 years, reaching nearly 48,000 children at its peak. Publicly funded pre-K now serves more than 33,000 children statewide through a mixed delivery model that includes both public schools and community-based providers. And we have nearly doubled our Judy and Patty centers from 62 to 119, strengthening two-generation supports that help stabilize families and improve outcomes for children. This is meaningful system growth. But growth alone is not success. What distinguishes Maryland's work is that we expanded access while strengthening quality and accountability. We raised reimbursement rates for providers. We reduced family co-payments, which are now among the lowest in the country. We tied funding to quality improvements through Maryland Excels. At the same time, rapid growth brings fiscal realities. State investment in child care assistance increased dramatically over the last 3 years. When enrollment surged beyond projections, we made the difficult decision to implement a partial enrollment freeze to preserve long-term sustainability. That was not a decision about whether families need support. It was a decision to protect the integrity and stability of the program. We are committed to working with you to ensure sustainability while maintaining access and quality. We're also building a mixed delivery pre-K system that gives families meaningful choice. That work is complex. It requires partnership with private providers, technical assistance, and policy refinement. We have made progress, but participation varies across counties, and we acknowledge that we have more work to do to meet statutory targets. We are strengthening engagement, simplifying grant processes, and building provider capacity to ensure that this system works equitably across Maryland. We are proud of the progress, and we are candid about the challenges. Demand continues to outpace funding in child care assistance. Demographic shifts are affecting enrollment patterns. Private provider participation requires continued support. But here's what's also true. More children are served today than at any other time in our state's history. Quality standards are stronger and more transparent. Early childhood is embedded in Maryland's long-term educational reform strategy. Our strategic plan, Maryland Momentum, holds us accountable to one clear goal. Every child in Maryland has access to a high-quality early childhood program. To guide our decisions, we ask 2 questions. Is this good for Maryland's children? Are Maryland's children better off because of this investment? Those are not rhetorical questions. They are our accountability standard. Before I close, I would like to address the analysis regarding the kindergarten readiness assessment. In July 2024, following an expedited procurement process, MSDE executed a contract with Renaissance Learning to implement a redesigned KRA beginning in the 25-26 school year. The redesigned KRA mitigates previously identified concerns through the following actions: assessment design and bias controls, validation and psychometric review, universal design and accessibility, bilingual availability, improved administration and reporting. We also now have a technical advisory committee that will be overseeing the implementation of the KRA to ensure that these issues and concerns are addressed. In closing, I want to say Maryland's early childhood system is not static. It is evolving, it is modernizing, and it is adjusting to fiscal realities while staying focused on children. Even in a challenging fiscal environment, we are keeping Maryland momentum moving forward because early childhood education is foundational to everything that follows. And with that, I will turn it over to our Chief Operating Officer, Krishna Talur, to walk through the specific responses to the analysis and recommendations.
Thank you, Superintendent. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. For the record, I am Krishna Talur, Chief Operating Officer for MSDE. I will now share a summary of department's response to the analysis. Regarding the CCS freeze and program funding, as of January 2026, CCS program had a monthly enrollment of 40,842 children and a total wait list of 5,113 children. MSD estimates meeting the enrollment target of 40,000 in spring 2026. The department is working closely with the DVM and Governor's Office to finalize an approach for prioritizing children on the wait list for new scholarships. For COMAR 13A.14.0608, the department will prioritize children experiencing homelessness for scholarships first, as well as children from the families transitioning from the temporary cash assistance program. MSDE's fiscal 2027 estimates did include the cost for the provider market rate increases, estimated at $33 million. However, MSDE does estimate a small deficiency in the program in fiscal 2027. MSDE continues to work with DBM on the appropriate funding level for this program. Regarding the questions on the credentialing program, MSDE would like to note that the uncertainty of funding for this program makes implementations of the requirements difficult. Lack of funding in fiscal 2027 will impact both the additional childcare employees and existing participants not being paid the funds due to them. In addition, stopping and restarting the program will also have impact on service contracts MSDE utilizes to administer the program. MSDE is currently working with DBM on the options for including the mandated funding for Maryland Excel's Quality Improvement Bonus Program in fiscal 2027 budget. Next, regarding the pre-K sliding scale, the original sliding scale capped the family share at 85% of the annual per pupil amount for families at the highest eligibility level in Tier 2. The revised sliding scale caps the family share at 65% of the annual per pupil amount for families at the highest eligibility level in Tier 2. For fiscal 2027, using the current sliding scale costs increases the cost by $3 million in fiscal 27. As more families in Tier 2 participate in the program, the impact of the current sliding scale on the state and local cost shares will increase. MSD is working internally to review the sliding scale to phase in the family share in a more even manner while still holding the cost at 7% of a family's annual income for lower income families. MSDE initiated a human-centered design review of the pre-kindergarten expansion grant process, including multiple sessions with advocates and interest holders, including the newly implemented pre-kindergarten system analysis workgroup. The department revised the pre-K expansion grant application and process. Changes included earlier release of the application, simplified language, less complex questions, more response items with checklists and prompts to guide the applicants. Regarding the CCAT system, in 2018, MSDE embarked upon a comprehensive system upgrade to consolidate CCATs and other small systems in the division onto a modern platform. Due to the pandemic and subsequent pre-bid protests, MSDE scaled down the scope of the upgrade to a limited upgrade of the CCAT system. The work began in April 2023 and was scheduled to be completed in January 2026. In November of 2025, MSDE paused the project due to the discovery of system testing issues to review scope, structure, and processes included in the system, incorporate the impact of the anticipated federal regulatory changes and long-term sustainability of the system. MSDE is expected to make a final decision on the future of the upgrade in spring of 26. The maintenance and operations costs for the CCAT system, the legacy system, is included in the FY27 budget. MSDE concurs with the recommended budget action to continue providing regular reports on the CCS program. However, MSDE respectfully requests a modification to the department's reporting requirements for this program. Currently, the department provides monthly reports as required in Article 9.5, 112 of the Education article. The department also provides quarterly reports as defined in the DLS analysis, JCR reports. MSDE proposes eliminating the monthly reports in the month the quarterly reports are also submitted. That is the 15th of September, December, March, and June. Regarding the recommended action related to the program sustainability, MSDE concurs with the governor's allowance. With that, our response to the analysis is completed. The MSDE team stands by for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Actually, I have a question. Your CCAT program, was that internally designed or were you reliant on Do It for that?
This was a legacy system that was implemented about 20 years ago, and we have a system maintenance and modernization contract with an external vendor.
But was that through your IT folks? It's right? It's an MITVP.
Correct.
So that was internally managed, not through Do It?
There is reporting protocols and coordination that takes place with Do It. We have project managers in the department, as well as the project managers from vendors who work together on the upgrade.
Okay, so who's really leading it? Who owns it? Outside the other agency or you guys?
MSDE leads the
MSDE.
work, yes.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you. And I have to share, I mean, it's fortuitous, but I just happened to get literally a few days ago a letter from the Maryland State Family Child Care Association, and I noticed they are not one of the people who has signed up to testify publicly, but expressing frustration with family child care providers and their frustration in trying to get information from the agency. So calls, they said, when providers have questions or concerns regarding the children in their care and the children's vouchers, calls are not returned in a timely manner, if at all, payment amounts are not consistent, and it's a quagmire for providers to calculate what days they're being paid or not paid for. So I just feel like that is important to share with you all, since I have the opportunity.
Thank you, and we'll look into that.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you very much for your testimony, and now we will call up the individuals who have signed up to testify publicly. Christopher, why don't we do 4 or 5 at a time? Christopher Cano, Christina Poish, Laura Wheeldryer, Angela Davis, Ann Geddes, and Donna Gunning. Donna's already, yep.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. Right. So each of you has 2 minutes, please. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Christopher Cano, Director of Political and Legislative Affairs for SEIU Local 500, which represents family child care providers here in the state of Maryland. And our members see firsthand the impacts that families are having under the current state of child care investment here in Maryland. I'm here to urge you to fully fund early childhood development in this coming fiscal year's budget and end the child care scholarship enrollment freeze, invest in the workforce that makes this system possible by ensuring that we have professional development and credentialing for our child care providers also fully funded. And we appreciate Governor Moore's proposed budget and the continued multi-million-dollar investment in the child care scholarship program. That commitment reflects an understanding that child care is essential to our infrastructure in Maryland for working families and for the state's economy, but maintaining funding levels is not enough. Since the enrollment in the scholarship program has surged in the past few years, that growth shows how critical the program is. And because demand has outpaced funding, there was an enrollment freeze that was implemented in May of 2025. And today, eligible families are still sitting on wait lists, unable to access the care that they qualify for. This means that parents cannot work without child care. The children cannot benefit from early learning if they can't get through the door. So we are asking that you end this freeze by providing the additional general fund support necessary to ensure every child can receive the scholarship for which they're eligible for. And at the same time, access means little if providers cannot stay open. Early childhood educators are among the lowest paid professionals in our education system, and if we want quality, stability, and growth in this sector, we must increase reimbursement rates, fund the credentialing and career pathways, and move towards wage parity with the rest of public education. I want to make it abundantly clear, child care is not optional. It is the workforce behind the workforce. And so on behalf of the members of SEIU Local 500, we urge you to end this enrollment freeze, invest in our early childhood educators, and build a system that truly supports Maryland's children and working families. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and subcommittee members. My name is Ann Geddes. I'm the Director of Child and Older Adult Policy with Mental Health Association of Maryland, and I chair the Children's Behavioral Health Coalition. I'm here in support of full funding for the Division of Early Childhood's budget. We're also asking for an amendment to strengthen the division's Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Support Services program by requiring data reporting. In recent years, the Children's Behavioral Health Coalition has been concerned about the status of the Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Support Services Program, which is overseen by MSDE's Early Childhood Division. The state has invested $3 million annually in the program, which is a tiny piece of MSDE's budget, but it's an important piece. The program provides support to child care providers, both family providers and those in child care settings, to help them nurture social, emotional development in very young children, manage challenging behaviors, and reduce child and teacher conflict and avoid suspensions and expulsions. Since 2009, MSDE contracted with the University of Maryland School of Social Work to provide training and technical assistance to the programs and the consultants who work in them. And UMD also collected critical data to ensure that programs were implemented consistently across the state with a focus on equity and quality improvement. The data showed that the program had wide reach, focused on equity, was being implemented consistently across the state, and achieved positive results. In FY25, MSDE did not renew the contract with UMD. The Children's Coalition is concerned that the discontinuation of that contract has resulted in a loss of important data that could be used to measure the quality and consistency of the programs across the state and demonstrate the positive impact of the state's investment. We ask that budget language include a requirement that MSDE report to the legislature the data points on the Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Support Services Program that had previously been collected. I emailed you a copy of the budget amendment, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your attention and appreciate the work you do for Maryland's youngest children.
Thank you, Madam Chair and the subcommittee. My name is Angela Davis, and I am the Assistant Director of a Kinder Care Learning Center in Frederick County. I support the budget of the Child Care Scholarship Program and can attest to how the current freeze of the CCSP is devastating the lives of families and small businesses and the future of Maryland's children. I urge the committee to consider how to allocate additional resources to the Child Care Scholarship Program to alleviate the constraints of the wait list. Our center is licensed for 83 children. We have dropped to 58 enrolled children. Because we serve lower income families who rely on CCSP, we cannot meet our budget. This doesn't just affect our bottom line, it also affects our team. 80% of my staff who used to work 40 hours a week are now fighting to get just 25. When enrollment drops, hours drop, and our teachers who are here to provide care and education for the children are barely making ends meet themselves. I have seen the dejection on parents' faces firsthand when they are unable to access child care scholarship that they are eligible for. I have several stories, but not enough time to tell them here. Without CCSP, parents must make impossible decisions about working, going to school, or finding opportunities to better their family's future while balancing care for their children. For many children, the meals we serve, breakfast, lunch, afternoon snack, are the only consistent meals they get all week. We are literally taking food out of the mouths of children. We are failing the most vulnerable among us, and that is a travesty. Parents want to work. They want to be a productive member of society. They want to be a part of Maryland's economy, but without CCSP, the math simply doesn't work. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Hedelman. Thank you for your leadership on early childhood and your continued commitment to Maryland's youngest children. I'm Laura Wheeldryer, Executive Director of Maryland Family Network. I want to make 3 points during my quick time before you. First, the enrollment cap on child care scholarship is presenting enormous challenges for families all over the state. I have the privilege in my job of talking to families every day, and as you just heard from Angela, we have parents facing impossible choices. People who move here from other states where they got scholarship in their last state and find themselves ineligible here because of the wait list. A mother who had a new baby and checked herself out of the hospital early to go home because she couldn't afford care for her older children. Parents who are making impossible choices of what bills not to pay so that they can pay for child care. We hope to see an end to the wait list. The current child care enrollment cap of around 40,000 children is arbitrary and was set simply to fit the current budget allocation. We would look forward to working with you and your colleagues and with the administration to raise the enrollment cap so more families can access care. Second, we must refrain from walking back on our commitment to public pre-K. The proposals to restrict eligibility, reduce the per pupil rate, and fail to increase the pre-K expansion grant fund will hinder the state's ability to meet blueprint goals. The state's pre-K expansion grant has been flat funded at $26.6 million for 6 years and is the only avenue for high-quality child care providers to enter the pre-K delivery system. In short, we have to have mixed delivery to keep both pre-K and child care afloat. And we need to do more for the population of students who, according to the Kindergarten Readiness Assessment, are arriving at school without the critical foundation necessary. I'll just wrap up by saying you are appropriators and you know that investments in young children pay off in the long run. We hope for your continued leadership. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, Chair and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Chris Push. I'm the Executive Director on behalf of the Maryland State Child Care Association, representing more than 5,500 child care and early childhood professionals in the workforce across the state. Child care is an economic and equity issue. I concur with my colleagues and partners who provided eloquent testimony to restore the child care scholarship funding, eliminate the child care scholarship waitlist, and include pre-K funding, as the rising per child costs without sufficient seat growth will result in fewer pre-K slots in FY 2027, moving us off track from our statutory goal of universal access by 2032. I want to focus on a critical issue that is essential to the success of Maryland's early childhood system, and that is restoring funding for the Child Care Credential Program in order to strengthen the workforce, to continue to lay the foundation for the workforce initiatives, including a career lattice and a workforce registry, as Maryland is one of 4 states without a registry. We are grateful for the FY 27 continued important investments in scholarships and pre-K. However, it proposes a $5.7 million reduction tied to the end of the Child Care Credential Program. This program is statutory and is deeply connected to all quality measures, including the pre-K, Maryland Excels, accreditation, and the workforce stability. Why would you only invest 8% in your budget to workforce development and quality? Childcare educators are professionals shaping brain development during the most critical years of life, yet many earn around $27,000 a year. Chronic underinvestment leads to high turnover and staffing shortages that directly undermine access and quality. Nearly 10,000 educators rely on the Child Care Credential Program as a meaningful incentive to remain in the field. Simply put, you cannot expand pre-K or meet blueprint goals without qualified, supported workforce. You cannot support the Child Care Scholarship Program without supporting the child care workforce. The message is clear. You do not value the child care workforce, and you are not concerned about the decrease in quality. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Senator Quarterman.
I would say a question, just in lieu of the chair's absence today. She's a staunch advocate, obviously, for child care scholarships, and I think she would echo the same thing that I can think that the committee and as a whole is going to do everything we can to defund as much as we can, and we appreciate your advocacy and appreciate you guys being here today.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much.
I echo that. Ditto. Thank you very
you.
much. Thank you. That concludes the hearing on MSDE, and we will now move to Morgan State University. I'll also say we have 3 agencies left. I have a hard stop at about 5 of 3. So I just want to, if people could keep that in mind, because we have to stop, we won't have a quorum then. Thank you. I would invite Micah Richards. Thank you, Mr. Richards.
Good afternoon. My name is Micah Richards, and I will be presenting the fiscal 27 Morgan State University budget analysis. Starting on page 1, the fiscal 27 budget increases by 6.3% to around $559 million compared to fiscal 26 appropriation. On page 5 and 6 in Exhibit 1, from fiscal 21 to 25, enrollment has increased in each year. However, due to the decline in first-time, full-time, and transfer students from fiscal 24 to 25, DLS requests for Morgan State to discuss the reason for the decline in first-time, full-time, and transfer students enrollment. On page 6 and 7, Exhibit 2 shows the applications submitted and accepted are at its highest level in fiscal 25 compared to previous years. On page 7 and 8, Exhibit 3 shows in-state enrollment is the majority of the campus at 58% in fall 25. However, over the last couple of years, the percentage of in-state enrollment compared to total enrollment has decreased to increase out-of-state enrollment so Morgan State can increase their revenue from the higher out-of-state tuition. On page 8 and 9, Exhibit 4 shows the second-year retention rate decreased by 0.8 percentage points from fiscal 22 to 23. The Maryland Higher Education Commission has not posted updated data for the third-year retention rates from fiscal 20 to fiscal 22. Therefore, DLS requests for Morgan State to discuss their approach to retain students, to increase the retention rate, and how Morgan State will collaborate with the Maryland Higher Education Commission to get the retention rate data updated. On page 9 and 10, Exhibit 5 shows the 4-year graduation rate in fiscal 20 and 21 was the same at around 18%, and the 6-year graduation rate increased by 1 percentage point from fiscal 18 to 19. However, it is still much lower than in previous years. Therefore, DLS requests for Morgan State to discuss efforts to increase the 4- and 6-year graduation rates. On page 10 and 11, Exhibit 6 shows for the 2016 through 2017 academic year, non-Pell full-time transfer students had the highest 8-year graduation rate at 79%. On page 11 and 12, Exhibit 7 shows the average net price was 41% lower than the cost of attendance. On page 12 and 13, Exhibit 8 shows institutional aid increased by 2.7% from fiscal 24 to 25, and need-based aid comprised the majority of the dollars at 74%. Also on page 14, Morgan State has a deficiency for fiscal 26 to move around $946,000 from the Special Fund Higher Education Investment Fund to the General Fund due to lower than expected revenues. On page 14 through 16, Exhibit 10 shows Morgan State has lost around $959,000 in federal grants due to changes on the federal level. DLS requests for Morgan State to discuss the impact of these reductions on their research and activities. On page 17, DLS requests for Morgan State to provide an update on the use of the $50,000 from Section 21 of the fiscal 26 budget bill for an artificial intelligence needs assessment. On page 17 and 18, Exhibit 11, tuition and fee revenue reported for fiscal 26 is based on estimates from fall 24, and Morgan State projects that the actual amount at the close of fiscal 26 will be higher than the fiscal 25 amount due to increase in enrollment. Therefore, DLS requests for Morgan State to comment on the planned timing for adjusting its expenditures and revenues based on changes in enrollment. On page 18 and 19, Exhibit 12, in fiscal 27, around $232,000 is moved from the General Fund to the Special Fund Higher Education Investment Fund contingent on the enactment of legislation pertaining to certain tax provisions in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. On page 20, in fiscal 27 allowance, $28.2 million is included for the fifth year of funding under Chapter 41 HBCU settlement. $8.5 million is included in the dedicated purpose account to assist Morgan State research centers to transition to energy resiliency and climate-related research. DLS requests for Morgan State to discuss the planned uses of these funds. On page 22, Morgan State should discuss the progress made to fill their 196 vacant positions. On page 23, in fall 25, Morgan State dissolved their partnership with Salud Education to create an osteopathic college of medicine. Furthermore, Morgan State still aspires to develop a medical school. Therefore, DLS requests for Morgan State to discuss next steps to become the fifth HBCU in the nation to have a medical school. On page 23 and 24, Morgan State submitted a report with a 5-step process to establish a task force to implement an initiative for the long-term development of East North Avenue in response to the requirement from the 2025 Joint Chairman's Report. The $250,000 in withheld general funds was approved to be released. On page 25, DLS requests for Morgan State to concur with the governor's allowance. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richards. Are there any questions? All right, thank you. I'd like to call up Dr. David Wilson, President of Morgan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair Hedelman and members of the committee. First, we are cognizant of the time, and so I will certainly make some comments with regard to the testimony that we have submitted, and then we go directly to your questions. Before I do that, however, I do want to introduce the members on the panel here who are with me. To my immediate right is our Executive Vice President and Chief Finance Officer, David Lachina. To my immediate left is a member of the Board of Regents at Morgan, Reverend Dr. Harold A. Carter, Jr. And then to my far left, I got that wrong, actually. To my far left is David Lachina, our Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer. And then to my right is Dr. Ryan Maltese, who is our Associate Vice President for Student Success at the university. First of all, just a few high-level comments. We want to always thank the legislature and members of the committee and the governor in particular for the investment being made in Morgan. And with that investment, we always vow to give the state a very, very high return. I'm going to ask the representative of the Board of Regents, Dr. Harold Carter, if he would also say a few comments before I resume and give you just a few high-level kind of takeaways from the testimony that we have submitted. Regent Carter.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilson and Madam Chair, members of the committee. Appreciate the time. Be very brief. I've been a member of the Board of Regents at Morgan roughly 9 years now, and that would be part of the 16 years that President Wilson has served. Indeed, in my opinion, and members of the board, I can also speak for it to a great extent, serving the university with sterling leadership. I serve as a member of the Finance Committee, as well as the Evaluation Committee, and I'm also incoming chair for the Nominating Committee for this year. It is no doubt but that the funding from the state, with the support of our governor, Governor Westmore, and this body, and certainly the state, is a wonderful investment where Morgan is concerned. It is something that really you can't put a price tag on, because as a public inner city urban institution, Morgan has continued to rise to the wonderful acclaims that it now has under Dr. Wilson's leadership. By all means, it's an investment in our sons and daughters, primarily of color, and all the more I speak on behalf of African-American men, young men especially, who also benefit from what Morgan is able to offer as an HBCU. I close by simply indicating that one of the things I think that brings me to this table on this day is certainly the fact that we can be blessed by the wonderful and extremely high value that media puts upon, for example, the Mackenzie Scotts with those powerful and big donations, but for the most part, they're 1 or 2 time donations, as much as the school is happy to receive them, but it is the consistent funding that comes through the state that blesses our institution, and that's what's necessary, that's what's needed, and that's what we continue to count on. Thank you very much.
And so following that, I just want to make sure that the committee and the legislature are aware that Morgan is entering its 159th year of existence, and we feel that it is in a period of immense transformation. It is on track to rapidly ascend to become an R1 very high research institution, and upon achieving that, which we think is imminent, it will become the 3rd public very high research institution in the state, joining hands with the University of Maryland College Park and UMBC. Also, we cannot really increase student enrollment at Morgan significantly on the residential level because we are at capacity. We have 11,600 students. We will surpass 12,000 in the fall. To put that in perspective, there are 4 HBCUs in the state of Maryland. If you add up the collective enrollment across all 4, Morgan now enrolls 50% of all students who are enrolled in an HBCU in the state. Last year, we received over 25,000 applications for our entering class. And so, as Regent Carter indicated, the great work, body of work that we have embraced at Morgan is certainly being recognized all over the state and indeed all over the nation. We also take pride in the fact that our students are taking great advantage of the investments being made in us. They really walk the campus with pride as they're able to go in and out of some of the best facilities, best laboratories, and word really travels. And as a result, they know all too well what our expectations are of them. We mean it when we say that we are at Morgan growing the future and leading the world. And we want our students to behave that way on the world stage, and they do. They are winners. They win so many of these national contests. They, for example, won the contest at Walt Disney in terms of the reimagining what that resort might actually look like in the future. They then went up to Penn State and won another national contest there on climate and environmental impacts in the nation, and then went on to MIT and did the same thing. Our students also won the Bloomberg contest for one HBCU student to manage $1 million in investment and to up their skills to enable them to be ready for careers in alt finance. We had another student who won the TEDCO's Innovator of the Year Award. I can go on and on. Our faculty also now at Morgan are being inducted into the National Academies. They are national fellows. We have about 8 scientists at Morgan who are amongst the top 2 scientists in the world. We now, with the gift that you heard from Mackenzie Scott, are able to have almost 10 endowed professors at Morgan, able to recruit some of the best professors from all over the United States, indeed all over the world. And those individuals are coming because they believe in the mission of the institution, and they know that they're going to get a high return on that particular tenure at Morgan State University. As I indicated, we certainly, in terms of our research ascendancy, we're in rare territory for 3 straight years, record numbers in terms of research awards. 3 years ago, our research awards exceeded $78 million. A year before last, it was $88 million, and then come June 30th of this past year, $104.5 million. As I sit here today, however, 6 months into the new fiscal year, those research awards are now at about $40 million, and so we are expecting perhaps a 25 to 30% decrease in our research awards by June 30th of 2026. Even with that, we still, based on the Carnegie criteria, feel that we are on track to, as I said, become that R1 very high research institution. And so we do thank Governor Moore for recognizing that we took a hit, as has the other research institutions in the state. And as such, he and his administration have set aside a special fund, I think it's $40 million, of which Morgan is going to get $8.5 million one time to try and respond to this reduction. And so we are now at Morgan going through a process of determining how best to invest those dollars research-wise to keep us on track, and certainly we'll report back. One other piece here, and then we'll turn to the questions. One way of really determining whether, especially as you aspire to become a research institution, that you're not engaging in research for research's sake, that you are engaging in impactful research, that the discoveries that are coming out of your laboratory are ones that will attract the attention of VCs or venture capitalists, and they could eventually actually be patentable, and they could become spin-off companies. Well, what I just said would be foreign words at Morgan 10 years ago, because the institution didn't see itself doing that and actually had retreated. However, I can sit here today and say, in 2023, Morgan made the list of the top 100 universities in the United States in terms of patents. That no HBCU had ever, in the history of the production of that list, made it, and Morgan did. Put it in context, we had $19 million in research expenditures in 2023, and from that, we were able to secure 16 original patents. I can say this because it is public. We came in at number 98. 5 spots above us was the University of Georgia with $550 million in research expenditures, but they only had 3 more patents than we did. And so Morgan is certainly engaging in the type of research that is patentable and that has led to now over 15 startup companies. And we are now surpassing 50 patents, and in 2015 we had 0. And so we are giving the state a high return on the investment. Our economic impact right now annually is $1.5 billion. So We submitted 55 pages of testimony. Those are my high-level comments, and so now I'm going to go straight to the comments. And so comment number 1 on page 5, you indicated that the president should discuss the reason for the decline in FT full-time, first-time, and transfer student enrollment, and I'm going to turn to Dr. Maltese.
Thank you, President Wilson. Good afternoon to the esteemed members of this subcommittee. In addressing comment 1, we first like to acknowledge that this is a very small decline, a change of just 44 students overall, as well as only 2 transfer students. So when looking at the overall numbers, as President Wilson spoke of, you juxtapose the 5 years of unprecedented growth at Morgan State University since 2021. This small decline is well within the margins of our continued enrollment projections. In looking at both our admissions applications and admits, we are in line both to surpass 12,000 students while still maintaining a strong incoming class that we will have the capacity to both serve and persist into the next year. So we are very comfortable with where we are.
And comment number 2, the president should discuss MSU's approach to retain students to increase the retention rate and how MSU will collaborate with MHEC to get the retention rate data updated. Once again, Dr. Maltese.
Thank you, sir. Student retention is, of course, extremely important to me. It is actually part of my title and one of my singular focuses as I do my job. First, just to provide a little bit of context, the manner in which student retention rates are calculated by MHEC varies slightly from the manner in which our institutional research office does that, which does create some statistically significant differences in how we account for retention. Our institutional report numbers, institutional research numbers do show that for 15 straight years, we have been at or above 70% retention rate. And this latest class, the incoming class of fall 24, which was also a record highest numbered class in the history of Morgan, was retained at a rate of 74.6% or 75%, which would have been the highest since COVID and the 3rd highest in the last 26 years. That said, we have increased our focus on student retention, especially in the first year. Incredibly, over the last 3 years or so, we have completely redesigned our academic advising model along with a new technology platform. We have expanded significantly our professional advising staff. We have also redesigned our entire onboarding process, something that we call the whole first year, which starts with admission, onboarding, new student orientation, the first year experience course, as well as a host of first year programs and an expanded peer mentoring support for our new students. We are also enhancing academic support both through supplemental instruction as well as success coaching and targeted interventions with various subpopulations. And then finally, we have had critical strategic partnerships with some of the nationally known institutions, especially Georgia State University, where we were both awarded a grant from the National Institute of Student Success to focus on first year operations and capacity building. And of course, our belief is that as we continue to increase our first year retention rates, those will undoubtedly impact both persistence as well as ultimately graduation.
We've actually won 6 national awards for the work that we have undertaken at Morgan in increasing retention and graduation rates over the last 8-9 years. Comment number 3, page 9, the president should discuss efforts to increase the 4- and 6-year graduation rates. So, Dr. Maltese?
And similarly to what was said earlier, we are also looking across the undergraduate life cycle, both at the 4-year and the 6-year rate. We have hired graduation cohort retention specialists who will focus on students who go into their 4th year, efforting them to get to that graduation stage within 4 or no later than 6 years. Those efforts in terms of advising have now taken on faculty advising as well. So even though students are released after their 1st and/or 2nd year from a professional advising model, once they go into their majors, our office is now responsible for training all faculty in in our new advising system and process with the hopes of making sure that students persist correctly without any kinds of barriers whatsoever, and then are constantly looking at new and innovative ways. As our president mentioned earlier, we have been recognized nationally for the work that we are doing, and we'll continue to look at that, including the introduction of an AI-enhanced chatbot in multiple gateway courses, both in math and English, and starting in the fall in our first-year experience course.
Comment number 4, page 16, in calendar year 2025, the federal government made significant reductions to grants and contracts. The president should discuss the impact of these reductions on MSU's research and activities. Madam Chair and committee, I addressed those earlier. And I can move on to comment number 5, page 17. The president should provide an update on the use of the funds concerning the additional $50,000 funding located in the 2026 budget bill for a Center for Equitable Artificial Intelligence Machine Learning Systems. We certainly have used the $50,000 to conduct 2 needs assessments for the Maryland State Department of Education to assist it in putting in place a curriculum and an approach to AI that hopefully will be in existence in K-12 schools across the country. We will continue to work collaboratively with the Maryland State Department of Education through our center in order to promote strategic, equitable use of AI in Maryland K-12 education across the country as we move forward. Comment 6, page 18, the president should comment on the planned timing for adjusting its expenditures and revenues based on changes in enrollment. And I'm going to turn to our CFO, David Lucina.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson, Madam Chair, members of the committee. First off, the university takes a very conservative approach to its incremental budgeting process. Essentially, budget submissions are based on the last available fiscal year actual amounts. So generally, given the dynamic nature of Morgan and its growth is resulting in amendments to the current year to catch up with the enrollment and with the numbers. But again, this process has really worked for us in this period. And so, again, it just allows us to maintain appropriate fiscal results even in being conservative in our budgeting process. Thank you.
Comment 7, page 20, the president should discuss the planned use of these funds. That is the $8.5 million from the governor special allowance account. I addressed that earlier as well. Comment 8, the president should detail the progress being made to fill vacant positions at Morgan. Once again, David Lucina.
Yes, so the university is constantly undertaking an ongoing process of improvement. We're committed to enhancing our recruitment processes and our processes overall at the institution. I think we've done some pretty significant improvement here. If you recall from the last year, I believe we were at about a 15% rate. I think we're down to a 10% rate. Some of that has been really pushed on us from some of the budget cuts in which we had to eliminate a number of vacant positions. And just as part of that process, we've actually slowed down the hiring process a little bit, which has taken us a little bit more time, but we're being more strategic and more intentional in our hiring process. Also important to note is the university, frankly, has a little bit of a longer recruiting cycle for major positions, including faculty, which is the main part of it. Also, some of the positions that we're trying to hire are difficult to find. Procurement officers are difficult to find. Some of the trade positions are difficult to find, particularly at the resources that we're able to commit. So overall, again, I think it's important just to understand, one, I think we've made some significant improvements in this, and two, universities are not a typical agency, if you will, so we have some recruitment cycles that are just a little bit different that need to be taken into account. Thank you.
And finally, comment 9, page 20, the president should discuss MSU's next steps following the dissolution of the partnership, referencing the partnership we had with a for-profit entity to bring into existence a College of Osteopathic Medicine at Morgan. We dissolved that partnership, did not feel that we could offer tuition in that model at a reasonable cost, and given the rising cost of a medical school education, the conclusion there was that we were headed in the wrong direction. So with that in mind, we did receive a grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to enable us over the next 18 months to plan a public nonprofit medical school leading not to the DO but to the MD degree. We are in conversations, of course, with Johns Hopkins about a partnership. We have a 20-member planning committee that is well at work planning what that will look like. And if things continue to move as we expect, we certainly will be having a discussion with the state of Maryland about how we could have this as a public medical school with some philanthropic support, where we could bring the tuition in at perhaps half the cost of a nonprofit, and certainly half the cost of what we were looking at initially. That would have been $65,000 a year had we continued along those along that path. With the model that we are looking at now, the Morgan State School of Medicine leading to the MD, we are thinking that we could bring the tuition in at about half that amount, somewhere around 27, 28, with modest state support and then a one-time investment on the part of the state for capital. So that's where we are. And you'll hear more about this, Madam Chair. We are moving toward the possibility that, should all things align, that we could have an entering class by fall of 2030 and no later than fall of 2031. And so with that, in terms of the recommended actions, recommendation 1, we agree with the Joint Chair's request, and certainly we'll have those reports ready. As you indicated from the analyst Richards, we have certainly already developed a first part of the East-North Avenue development report. We are marrying that with the university's overall development of the Lake Clifton property that we acquired from the city of Baltimore. It's 59 acres, and now we're just extending that from East-North Avenue all the way past our engineering building. And so those are my comments, and those are the remarks that we want to put on the record, and we stand ready to address any additional questions you have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? I don't think so. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll call up Garen McCall.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee and friends of the House of Labor. My name is Jerron E. McCall, and I serve as a multi-trades chief at Morgan State University. I also serve in the capacity of Area Vice President for ASME Council 3 in charge of higher education. I've served this institution for nearly 40 years. I've started in 1987 as a 21-year-old male, fresh out of technical school. Within 3 years, I became a licensed master at HVAC technicians, and therefore I speak to you today from the heart of the shop floor. Last year, in May 2025, Morgan State was confronting a recurring $12 million reduction in state appropriations. In response, the university implemented a hiring freeze, non-essential positions, and eliminated 35 vacant pens. They went on to further lay off an additional 15 staff members. No tenured or no tenure-track faculties were affected to our knowledge. But the impact on operations was immediate and was real. Today, we carry a backlog of more than 3,000 open work orders. Those work orders sit in our heating plant, our motor pool, carpenter shops, electrical, HVAC, et cetera, all supporting a campus of 12,000 students. That work is being carried by what I respectfully call the aging warriors. The aging warriors, they are skilled tradespeople who have been stretched thin, working past their capacity while the demand continues to rise. At this time, we know that the state is facing a structural deficit. In that environment, we are cognizant that every dollar must be treated as an investment. Morgan is not a cost center, it is a proven asset, generating $1.5 billion annually for Maryland's economy. Our request is a strategic and modest amendment of $1.5 million to fund 30 entry-level pins at approximately $15 per hour. It is urgent. We must hire the next generation of 21 years older today so that we can allow them to become the masters of trades tomorrow. This is how we clear that backlog and protect the state's investment. You don't resolve a budget deficit by starving a $1.5 billion engine. You double the investment and you double the return. Our enrollment
Mr.
is
McCall,
proof.
can you please wrap up?
And I thank you.
Thank you very much. You can finish your sentence, but you've gone past the...
Thank you. Our enrollment is the harvest, and the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. And I thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? All right. Thank you very much. And Dr. Morgan, Dr. Wilson, I just wanted to say also thank you for sharing your choir with us last week. We really, really enjoyed them. Thank you very much. That will conclude the hearing for Morgan State University. Now we'll move on to St. Mary's College of Maryland. And Mr. Richards.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity. So now I will present St. Mary's College of Maryland Fiscal 27 Budget Analysis. Starting on page 1, the Fiscal 27 allowance increases by $2 million to $92.9 million compared to Fiscal 26 working appropriation. On page 4, Exhibit 1, the total undergraduate enrollment decreased by 0.5% in FAR 25 compared to FAR 24. On page 5, Exhibit 2, the undergraduate applications submitted and the accepted number of students increased. However, the enrolled number of students only increased by 1 student in FAR 25 compared to FAR 24. Therefore, DLS requests for St. Mary's College to comment on how they are working to increase the share of accepted students who enroll. On page 6, Exhibit 3, out-of-state enrollment in FAR 25 decreased by 6.4% compared to FAR 24. St. Mary's College notes they have reached a balance between in-state and out-of-state admissions. On page 6 and 7, Exhibit 4, the second and third year retention rates increased for the 2023 cohort compared to the 2022 cohort. On page 7 and 8, Exhibit 5, the 4-year graduation rate of the 2020 cohort increased by 5.3 percentage points compared to the 2019 cohort. The 6-year graduation rate increased by 1.1 percentage points for the 2018 cohort compared to the 2017 cohort. DLS requests for St. Mary's College to discuss how they are working to improve graduation rates. On page 8 and 9, Exhibit 6, non-Pell full-time transfer students had the highest graduation rate at 76%. On page 10 and 11, Exhibit 8, 61.7% of institutional aid was allocated to merit scholarships. On page 14, Exhibit 11, the total state support in the Fiscal 27 allowance increases by $3.3 million to $46.2 million compared to the Fiscal 26 working appropriation. On page 15 and 16, Exhibit 12, St. Mary's College funding formula has protected the institution, and in Fiscal 27, total revenues increased by 1.7% compared to Fiscal 26. On page 18, Exhibit 13, total enrollment increased by 2.6% in Fiscal 25 compared to Fiscal 24. On page 19, Exhibit 14, education and general expenditures are projected to exceed revenues by $1.7 million in fiscal 27 compared to fiscal 26. Therefore, DLS requests for St. Mary's College to discuss their efforts to better align the education and general expenditures with revenues to reduce reliance on auxiliary revenue to resolve shortfalls. On page 20, Exhibit 15, state funding per full-time equivalent students decreased by $772 in fiscal 25 compared to fiscal 24. On page 22, Issue 2 discusses St. Mary's College actions to address the Office of Legislative Audit's findings and initiatives implemented to improve their financial management practices per the request from the 2025 Joint Chairman's Report. The $500,000 in withheld general funds was authorized to be released. On page 23, DLS recommends for St. Mary's College to concur with governor's allowance. On page 24 and 25, on June 20th, 2024, Moody's ratings changed St. Mary's College outlook from stable to negative. Moody's ratings noted that St. Mary's College credit rating will be updated later in calendar 2025. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Richards, are there any questions? Thank you. Welcome, Dr. Phillips.
Thank you so much, and I'll be as succinct as possible. Thank you so much, Chair Hellman and members. And with me today are Aaron Tamarchio from our Board of Trustees and Brendan Engler, our Director of Government Affairs. I just want to say thank you again for your support. We appreciate it, and the governor's proposed FY27 allowance that the DLS concurs with, and appreciate any and all support. Let me talk briefly about enrollment. We have increased approximately 9% from fall 2021 to fall 25. We attribute this growth to ability to recruit strong incoming classes of first-year and transfer students. We have engaged a variety of initiatives to strengthen this position, including the LEAD core curriculum. LEAD stands for Learning Through Experiential and Applied Discovery. We also have had a launch of nationwide marketing efforts to expand our application pool. We have increased by about 5% over the past 5 years with our entering classes. This demonstrates continued positive enrollment momentum, despite significant disruptions in admission cycles over the past several years. So wanted to move on to the topic of affordability. I would be remiss not to emphasize that achieving the college's mission remains challenging, balancing the demands of an excellent honors level curriculum with the promise of public access is complicated even in the best of circumstances. However, we continue to implement institutional efforts to identify efficiencies and control expenses. Combined with your support, we've been successful in keeping St. Mary's College affordable for Maryland students. As shown in Exhibit 4, tuition was frozen for 6 consecutive years without additional tuition relief funding from the state, and today just barely exceeds the levels from 12 years ago. So let me move forward to more of the analysis and responses to DLS questions. The efforts to increase the share of accepted students who enroll, it's important to recall that the decline in yield rates is a nationwide trend, not just specific to St. Mary's. However, in response to this decline, we've employed a comprehensive yield strategy to build strategic partnerships, improve financial incentives, and target personalized outreach. For example, we have recently engaged with private partners to establish and maintain an always-on digital presence, ensuring that engagement with prospective students and their families is consistent, not just centered around deadlines and events. We've also worked to further refine our merit scholarships and financial aid structure, prioritizing financial assistance offers to students who are best prepared to contribute to and benefit from what we offer at our college. Finally, we've expanded our yield event offerings to maximize the potential for accepted students to develop a personal connection with our college and subsequently increase their likelihood of matriculation. Let me comment on efforts to improve our graduation rates. I want to emphasize that As the state's designated public honors college, we proudly maintain some of the highest retention and completion rates among our peers. However, we remain aware that our statutory mission requires constant innovation and improvement. To that point, one of our most impactful initiatives has been the development and implementation of remote winterim courses. This is between the fall and spring semesters. These courses allow students to have more credits that they may need to be on track for timely completion of their degree. Additionally, beginning with the fall 24 cohort, each student is assigned 4 designated advisors on campus. This cuts across faculty, co-curricular, financial aid counselors, and academic student support services. This helps them address the challenges before they become obstacles and helps them achieve graduation. Finally, our flagship campus programs, the D'Souza Brent Scholars Program, Lander Scholars Program, Sum Primus, and have strengthened our ability to provide targeted and enhanced academic, co-curricular, and professional development opportunities to first-generation and Pell-eligible students, which make up about 30% of our entering class of 2025. Closing with more technical matters, DLS got us to comment on efforts to align E&G expenditures with revenues. In our assessment, the divergence between these two figures is methodological, not structural. The current E&G framework captures a broad range of expenditures associated with instruction, financial aid, and institutional support, but it does not reflect several significant revenue streams which support these activities. For example, the college's full scholarship and financial aid budget is recorded as an E&G expenditure in the current framework. However, a substantial portion of that budget is funded through a combination of private philanthropy, endowed scholarships, and annual gifts. Since those revenues are considered restrictive, they are not counted as part of our E&G revenues, which leads to the appearance of a gap, even though our commitments are responsibly and sustainably funded. A similar methodological discrepancy exists in our instruction and academic or institutional support line items, which have benefited from a number of competitive contract and grants awards, as well as strategic use of bond proceeds to expand academic programming in high-demand fields. In summary, when all of the supporting revenue sources are accounted for, there are no structural deficiencies in the college's budget. Thank you again. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I don't think so. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't think we have any public witnesses. We are going to move on to aid to community colleges, and I am going to depart. It was lovely being with you all. And Senator Quarterman is going to come up and chair the rest of the hearing. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. David Purpert here from the Department of Legislative Services, here to go over the Aid to Community Colleges budget. Beginning on the first page, after accounting for proposed deficiencies and contingent reductions, the fiscal 27 allowance increases by 2.6% to $518.1 million. Moving to Exhibit 1 on page 5, total fall enrollment has increased each of the last 3 years. From fall 2022 to 2025, enrollment increased by 18.3%, or about 17,000 students, but is still below the level seen in fall 2019. Skipping ahead to Exhibit 9 on page 13, this exhibit displays the 4-year graduation / transfer rate for white, Black, Asian, and Hispanic students. In the 2020-21 cohort, Black and Hispanic students closed the gap between all students by 0.7 percentage points. And then continuing to Exhibit 11 on page 15, this lists the tuition and fee rates by community college for fall 2025 by service area status, and the non-weighted statewide average for tuition and fees is about $4,900 for a service area resident. Exhibit 12 on page 16 displays the amount of Pell Grants received and total aid awarded by community college students. In fiscal 2025, Pell Grants comprise about 85% of total aid, coming in at $152 million. The amount of Pell aid has increased considerably from fiscal 2023 to 2025, growing by almost 42%. This increase is partially explained by the increases in minimum and maximum award levels, but a significant portion of the growth is due to the number of Maryland community college students receiving awards increasing and their awards being larger on average. Exhibit 14 on page 18 visualizes the distribution of state funding for aid to community colleges after accounting for contingent reductions. The CAID formula accounts for the vast majority at 80.1%, followed by retirement funding at 15.3%. Exhibit 15 on page 19 highlights changes between the fiscal 2026 working appropriation and fiscal 2027 allowance after accounting for proposed deficiencies and contingent reductions. The primary increases are for the CAID formula and retirement contributions. Continuing to page 20, the CAID formula makes up the overwhelming majority of state funding for the 15 locally operated community colleges, and a major component of the formula is the FTES, or full-time equivalent student, enrollment at each college 2 years prior, or the average of the second, third, and fourth prior years, whichever is larger. Exhibit 16 lists the FTES enrollment for each college from fiscal 2023 to 2025. Between fiscal 2024 and 25, 4 schools saw a decline in FTEs, while 11 saw growth. In percentage terms, Warwick grew the most at 15.3%, and Garrett decreased the most at 4.5%. Another major component of the formula is the per FTES funding for students at selected four-year institutions, as 27.2% of that number gets multiplied by the FTES count described previously, and this comprises the base component of the CAID formula. Discussion of the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act of 2026, or BRFA, begins on page 21, and there are 2 provisions which impact aid to community colleges. The first provision limits the growth in community college aid provided under the CAID formula to an increase of 3% over the preceding fiscal year for each community college for fiscal 2027 through 2029. Language in the budget bill contingently reduces funding for the CAID formula by about $21 million in general funds. Exhibit 17 on page 22 shows CAID formula funding by year, along with the percentage of aid per FTES at selected four-year institutions that is used in the formula. Under current law, the fiscal 2027 allowance would increase by 8.6%, or about $34 million, year over year, going from about $402 to $436 million. With the contingent reduction, the fiscal 2027 allowance only increases by 3.4%, or $13 million, going from $402 to $415 million. Exhibit 18 on page 22 shows the effect of the 3% cap on each community college in fiscal 2027. Prince George's College has the largest nominal decline, and Warwick has the largest percentage decline. Garrett and Hagerstown colleges are only 2 not impacted by the cap due to the level of their FTES enrollment decline in fiscal 2025. Exhibit 19 on page 23 shows the CAID funding formula with and without the contingent reductions, including a forecast for fiscal 2028 and 29. After a significant difference between current law and the BRFA provision of $20.99 million in fiscal 27, DLS estimates the provision will reduce funding by about $5.5 million in each of fiscal 28 and 29. Exhibit 20 on page 25 shows that state funding per FTES grew steadily each fiscal year from fiscal 2017 to 2024, as enrollment declined, but a hold harmless provision remained. Beginning in fiscal 2025, certain formula changes were made, including the elimination of the hold harmless provision, which led to 2 consecutive decreases in per FTES funding. The grant per FTES increases by 3.7%, or $201 from the 2026 working appropriation to the allowance under current law. From the 2026 working appropriation to the allowance, including the contingent reduction, the grant per FTES decreases by 1.3%, or $69, which is still above the fiscal 2023 level. A separate provision in the BRFA reduces the state share of community college retirement costs by shifting 50%, or $2.3 million of the year-over-year cost increase to local jurisdictions. This reduction amount will remain constant in the out years as well. The BRFA of 2025 contained a similar action that permanently shifted a portion of the state's share of increased retirement costs in fiscal 26 to the counties. In that instance, it was $4.8 million. However, DLS recommends shifting 100% of the fiscal 2027 increase in the community college retirement costs to the local jurisdictions. Exhibit 21 on page 26 lists the differences between the 50% cost shift in the BRFA and the 100% cost shift DLS recommendation as it pertains to cost increases for each college. The BRFA provision as introduced would shift $2.3 million, whereas the DLS recommendation would shift $4.7 million. And then skipping ahead to page 33, that contains the recommended action which was just described, and that concludes my presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. Any questions? All right. I think there's a secretary here. So who's up next? Secretary? Just come up. Sure. I think you guys are all together. Secretary first. Anybody come up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Sanjay Rai. I serve as the Secretary of the Maryland Higher Education Commission. I would also like to thank Department of Legislative Services for their very thoughtful analysis. I have been asked to address an issue on page 17, status of the $300,000 in general funds added to the Aid to Community Colleges grant for the College of Southern Maryland under Section 21 of the fiscal year 2026 budget bill. I can confirm the following. The full appropriation has been incorporated into the College of Southern Maryland's allocation within the CATE funding formula, and it is being distributed in accordance with the statutory disbursement schedule under Education Article 16-308. Under the formula, payments are issued in 3 installments, 25% by July 31, 25% by November 30, and 50% by March 31, following full final enrollment reconciliation. Accordingly, of the additional $300,000, $75,000 was included in the first payment, $75,000 in the second payment, and the remaining $150,000 will be included in the final installment. MHEC confirms that the $300,000 was included exclusively within the College of Southern Maryland's CADE allocation. No funds have been transferred by budget amendment or otherwise, and no additional reporting or release conditions were attached beyond the statutory reversion requirement. All fiscal year 2026 CADE formula payments are currently on schedule and in full compliance with the statutory timelines and budgetary intent. We sincerely appreciate committee's leadership and thoughtful consideration of programs that expand access and affordability for Maryland students. Continued investment in aid to community colleges, funding strengthens our community colleges, support student success, and help meet Maryland's workforce and economic needs. We respectfully urge the committee to maintain its commitment and to aid to community colleges. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and member of the committee. My name is Brad Phillips. I'm Executive Director of the Maryland Association of Community Colleges, and I'm here with President Wilson from the College of Southern Maryland. And I just want to go through the analysis and answer the questions that you have asked and make some general comments in the introduction. I want to talk about 2 specific things, and then I'll answer the 3 questions that you've asked me to respond to. But first, thank you, Mr. Propert, for this great analysis, and I think stable and predictable funding have helped us achieve some of the outcomes that you have described in this document. 2 things, though, when we look at the way the budget has come down this year, we're very pleased to see a 3% increase for the current year, considering the context of which we are around. The 2 things that I want to raise are looking at the out years when it comes to capping the enrollment growth or the cap of the CATE funding to 3%. Whenever our enrollment outstrips our funding growth, what happens is you end up penalizing colleges who actually are fulfilling their mission as an open enrollment institution and growing significantly larger versus those institutions that may not have as large of an enrollment. In instances where that happens, you end up rewarding per FTE funding for slower growth colleges substantially more than you do for institutions that have a larger enrollment. They have to do more with less. And we respectfully ask that you do not cap it at 3% for 28 and 29. The second is the hold harmless. We would love to see a provision put back into the CADE funding formula that would hold our community colleges harmless. Since we have experienced the significant change in the formula in 2025, we've had colleges every year that have shown growth, but yet somehow fallen within the mechanics of the way it's calculated and receive less funding. And we have 2 this year. Hagerstown Community College, who has experienced tremendous growth, is no longer eligible for what is the small size factor. And as that phases out over the 5 years, because there's no hold harmless, they are going to be penalized. They did have fewer FTEs this year than they had the prior year, but because of this change that's happening over the course of 5 years, their small size factor within the formula is diminishing until it's to 0 in 5 years. So that's impacting their budget primarily this year more than the FTE drop. Another one is the College of Southern Maryland. I don't want to steal President Wilson's thunder, but the $300,000 one-time grant that we just described is not in the base calculation, and it's outside. So that's something I will let President Wilson address. Finally, I'll answer the questions that you asked. You have them in writing. I'll go into them very briefly. The one question you asked is about the successful persister rate, and I will just say thank you very much for measuring us accordingly versus traditional rates. The successful persister rate measures students as they continue to persist, graduate, or transfer, or earn a certificate. And we show great strength. Some of the reasons why are actually homegrown here in the state of Maryland that have now moved outside of the state. CCBC has been an excellent role model for other institutions when it comes to the co-requisite instructions, where we actually help students in college level work with a component of developmental. That's been a tremendous success and is being adopted nationwide by other community colleges. That started here. We have other accelerated support models. We have structured pathways, early college alert systems, and expanded academic supports that have all helped our students persist and graduate. The second question is about placement practices during COVID. And while not a result of the pandemic, our placement practices have continued to evolve. And one of the things that we did a number of years ago, if you keep in mind these are lagging indicators, is that we were able to actually look within what we could do differently when it comes to placing students. And it was our chief academic officers and provosts group at the time that really looked at doing multiple measures. And that effort was actually led by our now Secretary Sanjay Rai, who helped institute that statewide, and you're beginning to see the progress that that's made on students as they persist and complete. The last question you asked was, what are we doing to support dually enrolled students? And again, as this has evolved across the state, we have evolved with it. We have comprehensive advising, we have orientation, we have tutoring, early college alert systems. All of the resources that are available to regularly enrolled students are able to take advantage of those services. And we see this as a really strengthening program. We already know that students who have the opportunity to be dually enrolled succeed in college at a much higher and greater rate. We'd love to see more statewide coordination on a statewide approach to dual enrollment, possibly. But with that, I'll stop talking and happy to answer any questions.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Thank you so much for your time. We truly appreciate the commitment that the governor and the General Assembly have shown to Maryland's community colleges through the CADE formula and the proposed 3% increase for fiscal year 2027. So thank you for that. In a year, we know, when the overall state budget is growing by just 0.8%, that investment speaks volumes about how much you value the work of our 16 community colleges and the nearly 500,000 students we serve. And we know that that investment matters. Community colleges are one of the most direct economic development tools the state has at its disposal. The latest Lightcast economic impact study shows that Maryland community colleges contribute $11 billion annually to our state's economy. That delivers a strong return for taxpayers and, most importantly, for our students. And we're seeing that impact in real time at the College of Southern Maryland. We welcomed our largest class in the last 5 years. It's a 7.7% increase over the previous year, and we're back to our pre-COVID, pre-pandemic numbers. This was our third straight year of enrollment growth and our first return to pre-pandemic levels. The National Student Clearinghouse actually reports that community colleges are driving the majority of higher education enrollment growth. Students are coming back, and they're choosing us. That's why state funding is so incredibly important. While we're grateful that the CADE formula is being funded, we do have concerns about two things that have already been mentioned: the hold harmless provision and the 3% cap on annual increases through fiscal year 29. So we've talked about the hold harmless provision used to ensure that even in tough budget years, right, colleges won't fall below prior year funding levels, especially when enrollment is rising. When that provision was removed, we felt that firsthand, and so did the Community College of Baltimore County. At CSM, our funding dropped by $851,287. And while we're incredibly thankful for the $300,000 supplemental grant in fiscal year 26, that challenge is that the year's calculation builds off the previous year's lower base. So the loss continues to ripple forward. Now the 3% cap makes it even more difficult to recover. So based on our improved enrollment and retention, CSM should receive $21.27 million in fiscal year 27, nearly a $1.49 million increase. But because of that 3% cap, we will receive $896,380 less than that amount. So over 3 years, the combined impact of the funding reduction and now the cap means a total loss for CSM of $2.23 million. Simply put, funding was reduced. The next year started from that lower number, and the cap prevents us from catching back up. What makes this especially difficult is that our growth is real and it's sustained. Again, after nearly a decade of enrollment declines, CSM has seen steady increases since January 2023. And in the midst of all of that, we've expanded workforce programs, added flexible and online options, expanded our dual enrollment and early college opportunities, strengthened retention, and invested in intrusive advising. These strategies are working. We have more students who are coming to us, and that translates into a long-term economic benefit for the state. So we certainly understand the fiscal pressures that Maryland faces, but locking in at a 3% cap through fiscal year 29 creates unintended consequences for colleges like CSM. It would be far more prudent to evaluate such constraints year by year based on actual fiscal conditions. And as president of the college, I respectfully ask that the hold harmless provision be restored and that the ongoing 3% cap on funding increases be reconsidered. Thank you for your support. Thank you for all that you've done for the college, and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson, and thank you, Brad, as well, and Secretary. Appreciate all the comments. Senator, do you have any questions?
No, I appreciate it, Mr. Chair. I just appreciate everything that we're doing. I'm glad to see things have turned around, right? And we need to work on the support that you need.
Thank you. And the hold harmless, we've talked a lot about that in the past, and I know we're going to continue this ongoing conversation. So appreciate you highlighting it once again as we look to hopefully support our community colleges the best we can.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
So much.
Thank you.
All right. And then I believe we have a couple other people signed up to testify. Eric Schwartz, Felicia Williams, Christopher Gano, and one more, Denise Riley.
All right. Mr. Chair, thank you. We at SEIU Local 500 represent over 23,000 workers, including faculty and staff at various universities and colleges in Maryland and Washington, D.C. And our community college faculty know very well the impact access to higher education and on-the-job skills training have on the success of Marylanders. We commend Governor Moore and the members of this General Assembly for prioritizing education in this budget despite the economic constraints that are facing our state. And Maryland's economy and workforce development are dependent on the quality of education provided by our community colleges, a level of quality that's contingent on the full funding of the CADE formula. Now, the looming budget deficit might give some of you pause in making the commitment to fully fund CADE. However, funding cuts to our community colleges could cascade in subsequent years, resulting in negative impacts to our economy. Therefore, we would request the reinstatement of the hold harmless component to the CADE formula for the coming fiscal year. For the past couple of years, the BRFA has removed this provision provision and created a financial baseline for our colleges, the colleges could always count on not receiving less funding than the previous year, and some of our colleges are receiving less funding despite their enrollment increases. Meanwhile, the funding increases are being capped at 3% for the next 3 years, and we would ask that this be stripped from the BRFA in fiscal years 28 and 29. This instability in funding makes planning budgets, maintaining programs, and student outcomes all unnecessarily challenging. It just seems counterproductive to cripple our workforce development at Maryland's community colleges when the economic and education policies of our nation are experiencing drastic change right now due to the current administration that's occupying the White House. To sum it up, we ask the members of this committee to prioritize full funding of the CADE formula, reinstitute the hold harmless provision, and maintain your commitment to Maryland's economic health through our community colleges. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And you were Christopher Gano, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And your name, ma'am?
Denise Riley.
Okay, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair and member of the committee. I'm Denise Riley, Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs for the American Federation of Teachers in Maryland. AFT Maryland is a state federation that represents the full-time faculty at 8 of the state's community colleges, including Prince George's, Montgomery, Baltimore City and County, Chesapeake, Frederick, Hagerstown, and Howard. On behalf of the members of these institutions, we ask this committee to fully fund the important work of the state's community colleges and amend the budget proposal to stop any reduction in funds. Also to reject the requested 3% cap to CADE funding for each of the next 3 years. Capping the amount of additional funds community colleges can receive may create serious challenges. If the cap is extended for 3 years, those challenges may be impossible to overcome. Our community colleges play a vital role in the success of Maryland's future. As opportunity spaces for dual enrollment students, they are essential to the blueprint and are the starting point to train highly qualified teachers. They are where students can start apprenticeships, learn a trade, or begin a profession that leads to a stable, well-paying careers that strengthen our state's economy now and for years to come. In addition, they are places for students to begin their journey towards a degree. Without them, higher education may be inaccessible to many because of financial restraints. Capping the funds for community colleges caps Maryland's future and limits how many students can be served. We again call on this committee to restore full funding for our state's community colleges. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. Senator, any questions? No. All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time. I believe that's everyone who had signed up. Was there anybody left who had not signed up that wishes to say anything? All right. That concludes our hearing. Thank you.